Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, if you don't mind, I would very much like to continue on with the 31 days of gangster films and cop films from the year 1970 to the present day. And it is my hope that this can afford us, you and I, my dear friends, with the opportunity to continue to talk about this thing which we all love, which is cinema, and specifically examples of cinema from these respective genres, the police film genre and the gangster film genre, in video discussions over the course of these 31 days. And that brings us to today, and this video specifically, which I would like to use to focus on the cop film genre element, the police film genre element. And for purposes of that, I have a film, or I should say a series of films, which is dating from, say, the first film from the late 80s, and then all the way through the 90s and into the 2000s. And this is a film series that is very entertaining, and it is a film series that is very near and dear to my heart. And there are some films in particular, because I mentioned that it is a series or franchise, as one could call it. It is a series of films where, in particular, there are a certain number of, there is the first film, and then there are the sequels that follow. And I must say that there is a great love that I have for the first film and for a number of the sequels as well. And I'll try to speak about those going forward right now. So I'm referring to the series, as I say, from starting from the late 80s, and it is could be said to be an example of the action-adventure thriller film genre from the 1980s US cinema and extending into the 90s and beyond, with a main character who is a police officer, who's a cop, and who, through various circumstantial, say, situations, he finds himself, or maybe not, as the case may be, or as the plots may be for each of these films, he finds himself as a lone hero fighting against extreme odds, seemingly insurmountable odds or adversary, and very adverse odds. And he is always showing a sense of wit, a sense of frailty, sensitivity, as well as heroism. And his heroics are very famous, iconic in the landscape of action cinema. And he emerges as one of the great action hero icons of American cinema, dating back from the 1980s, when this landscape was and is very rich and very filled with so many examples of the genre. Here is one of the great ones, and the character is John McClane, and this who is portrayed by, of course, Bruce Willis. And I am therefore speaking of the films in this series of films, which is Die Hard. Die Hard. So this series of films, beginning with the film, the great classic film, Die Hard, and then following up with Die Hard 2, and Die Hard with a Vengeance, and Live Free or Die Hard, or Die Hard 4.0, and A Good Day to Die Hard, the fifth film. We have these films as a direct type of treatment or handling of the story of this character, John McClane, again, the Bruce Willis character. And he is a cop, he's a police officer, and he is in various situations depending on what film you find him in. So one can say that these are police films, and in particular there might be films that could be said to really dig into the work ethic and the style and the culture and the actual the police type of inquiry method and mode and procedural types, especially when you get into something like Die Hard with a Vengeance, for example, which I think has that a lot, especially in the context, as we know, of New York City and the police, and the specific plot that is confronting the police force, and in particular John McClane, with regard to New York City during this particular point in time. So I think that film in particular has this police procedural type of feel to it, and a New York City grittiness that also adds to the proceedings oh so nicely. But that's not to say that we don't get any less of the John McClane effect, the police officer who is John McClane. That effect, we don't get any less of that in any of the other films we speak of. And in fact, a lot of his interactions with some of the key characters that we meet along the way, for example, Die Hard or Die Hard 2, has to do with, say, his insight or his instinct as a law enforcement officer, as well as his interactions with other people who are on the same side of the law, but maybe there are antagonistic relationships, or maybe there are really deep connections that can be made as well, depending on the characters, depending on the scenarios and situations that we meet, and especially if it's officers of the law at the state level or maybe on the federal level, because we are talking about the United States. So or at least for the most part. I mean, there's actually another film in the series which takes place outside of the United States. It's an interesting example, but in any event, we are speaking therefore about the main character of John McClane, and is that a constant? Is that point that is constant, and that gives these series of films, Die Hard, the energy and glow and vitality and wit and humor, and I think grittiness, sort of earthy grittiness that is, I think, very accessible to the viewers. It is that performance and Bruce Willis's persona, screen persona, and presence, I think, obviously, I think, guides these series of films to the great heights of success and cultural phenom level enjoyment factors that these films enjoy. Now, with regard to the many fans, many fans of these films, Die Hard. Now, we should say that it could be said to be coming down to the great success of the first film, Die Hard. And Die Hard is, as I was mentioning earlier, one of the great classics. This is such a well-constructed movie. I remember it. I wasn't able to see it in the theater because this was in the late 80s, but I was still too young to go to the theater because it was a pretty violent film. But I was able to watch it on VHS tape later, still as a child. And there were scenes where I was, I mean, what's the phrase? Hiding behind the sofa. It was tense. It was sometimes it was shockingly gory. There were moments of real, I think, cleverness, and the idea of identity or mistaken identities, the communications over the walkie-talkies, or that kind of communications you can hear but you can't see, and that type of dynamic is very much prevalent, and it's played upon so cleverly in the plot. And then we have Alan Rickman, of course, and then Bruce Willis as that protagonist-antagonist relationship, and Alan Rickman really brings so much to the role. Shoot the glass and the like, and so and there are little details, very great, understandable and accessible human moments. The idea of, I mean, just a very simple thing like wanting to feel the feel of a carpet on the balls of your bare feet, for example. I mean, that is something that I can definitely understand, but then it is turned to great effect as for purposes of a plot point, and a very detailed and very significant plot point, I might add. So it's these little things too, seeming little things, seemingly mundane things that are so also very understandable and very relatable, that really link the through line of humanity throughout this film, and that combination, that combined with the really intricate structure of the plot and the nature of the building itself and the architecture and the violence and the shocks and the iconic screen persona of the main characters that we witness, especially Bruce Willis and Alan Rickman, and etc., and the humor and the dialogue and the action scenes and the type of unexpected twists and thrills that accompany this, I think, make for really profoundly entertaining experiences all around, every single time I watch this film. As I say, when I was a kid watching it on VHS tape, it was startling. It was scary. It was frightening. It was cool. It was exhilarating, and everything, every other adjective one can muster up. I wish I had a thesaurus here, but I would try to come up with more adjectives. But I'm trying to emphasize just how thrilling it is. And of course, you don't need me to say that, because this has such a great following of fans around the world, and for good reason, because it is so thoroughly entertaining. And I must say too that as a kid, I saw Die Hard 2 on VHS, and I wasn't able to watch it in the theater, unfortunately. But that had the same type of dynamic. It played with the idea of a sequel in a way, in terms of the same character, the continuity of John McClane, the continuity of the other characters, Bonnie Bedelia, etc. And it also had new adversaries, new villains, new antagonists that would be setting up yet other more in the sequel form, the seemingly insurmountable odds in public places, this time in the context of an airport, etc., and airplanes and the like. And that also adds a sense of the dimension of playing around with the geography, exploring various corners and crevices of the architecture, thus adding to yet another dimension of this, both action in front of the scenes and also behind the scenes, in a manner of speaking. Plus, the atmosphere and the snow and the suspense of the airplanes and the passengers in the air, etc. And then you have also at the same time the continuity of John McClane, the great Bruce Willis as John McClane. And then you get to the other films, starting with Die Hard with a Vengeance and Good Day to Die, Live Free or Die Hard, and A Good Day to Die Hard. So the third film, fourth film, and fifth film, respectively. And I must say that I saw these films in the theater, respectively. And when I saw Die Hard with a Vengeance, which is the third film, which also has great performances and with Samuel Jackson and Jeremy Irons, etc. When I saw this film in the theater, I was so taken with this film. First of all, I was impressed. I was impressed to no end just how it was able to use or take the John McClane character and bring him really back to the New York City police roots, as it were, especially if you know the continuity of the character from Die Hard to Die Hard 2, then to Die Hard with a Vengeance. You know what I'm referring to. But and we see him at his quote-unquote desk job, in a manner of speaking. And so that is also an interesting thing. You know, in past instances, we had seen him sort of away from his quote-unquote desk job, or on holiday, in a manner of speaking. So here we have him on the job, as it were. And here we encountered Samuel L. Jackson and Jeremy Irons and the plot, and going across the city and exploring the various people that we meet, and going across class lines, and even the characters who might seem to be, say, maybe seemingly minor or insignificant, can always reveal very important plot details, and there's an interesting plot line, or there's a very fascinating character development with seemingly minor character, and the importance of memorizing U.S. presidents, which I thought was such a clever thing. So the cleverness of the doses of cleverness and the action set pieces, I think, are so great. This is, I think, if I said that the first film was my favorite film in the series, Die Hard with a Vengeance is my second favorite. And I think it's I like how it's the same and yet it's different. I like how there's continuity and yet it feels unique in the series. And I like how it's putting it in a different setting which seems similar and familiar. And there are types of familiarity aspects, in a manner of speaking, especially when we get to, say, Jeremy Irons' character and his background, etc. But I like how it feels the same, but also feels unique, and I think that's a great strength, one of the great strengths of Die Hard with a Vengeance. And then I also saw Live Free or Die Hard, of the fourth film, and then the fifth film, A Good Day to Die Hard. And I must say that these films they were like really blockbuster entertainments, each in their own ways, with the set pieces that just seem to up the ante, really go so much into the stratosphere of action adventure entertainments as we get, especially into the 2000s. And so uh, I was simply blown away. I needed a seatbelt in my movie theater seat when I was watching these films. Not to say that I didn't for the other films, but there is that incredible spectacle of all these scenarios that are going on. And when we get to the fifth film, and we get a total almost change of scenery, and we get the idea or notion of sort of covert operations and the like in international territories. And we're getting into almost superhero stratospheric aspects of the character, while in an amazing way retaining the down to earthness of the John McClane character, which I think is due to the real great performance by Bruce Willis. That laconic, cool, witty, almost acerbic type of approach, but is also very much on edge and filled with tension, and also alert and observant and very, very strong when he needs to be. And so, but also he is he is still open to acknowledging his weaknesses when they become manifest themselves, especially those character traits in him that have a lot to do with the fueling of the various relationships that we see across the films, all the way up to the fifth film. I mean, there are a lot of family dynamics, shall we say, that are at play throughout the film. So this becomes part of the vulnerability of the character, and also in the family context, that is also another way for us, the viewers, to become associated with him and root for him and sympathize with him and his position, especially when he is then caught in these almost extraordinary situations, and as I say, seemingly insurmountable obstacles that he is able, or he attempts to overcome time and time and time and time and time again. And we are with him all the way. So just taking a step back and looking at the films in the franchise for a moment, I should say that maybe, while I would say that the fourth film and maybe the fifth films for me might not be as, say, my favorites as, say, the earlier films, I still am thoroughly entertained by them, each in their own way. And there's some action set pieces in the fourth and fifth films, especially that were just wow, they really went there. That type of experience and that type of reaction. So they are still thoroughly enjoyable and entertaining on that level. And then if I had to really had to choose, I would say it was the core three films for me, starting from the 80s into the 90s, that I kind of grew up on. They became staple cinema energy, in a manner of speaking. And I mentioned my exhilaration when watching the third film in the theater, and then just going back to the second film and the first film, watching those on VHS tape and being excited and thrilled and energized by them. And then it comes down to the iconic status of Die Hard, the first film. This is one of the greats. This is really one of the greats in action cinema entertainment from the 20th century. It is, I mean, one watches it now. I watch it now, and it feels so modern. It feels so fresh. It's so inventive, and I love its various levels. It operates narratively on various levels, much like the levels of a high-rise tower. It's incredible. And the crisscross and the type of almost cleverly applied bait and switch aspect to many levels of the plot, and that type of plot dynamic is mirrored and echoed through one degree or another in the films that follow, I think, to great effect. But there's something special. There's something so special about Die Hard. I can't quite put my finger on it, except to say that it feels like this perfect action movie with John McClane, the police officer, this cop who is in the wrong place at the wrong time type of thing situation. But even though that might be the case, or despite that being the case, he still finds the ability to overcome and to become the hero, the cinematic hero, John McClane, as personified by Bruce Willis in these series of films, which is Die Hard. Okay, my dear friends, so that's it for now. And so until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well, and please keep on watching a lot of great movies. Thank you so much, as always, for your time. I very, very much appreciate it. Stay strong, stay safe, and cheers.
Yippee-ki-yay,